Good. Uh, there we go. Awesome. And I will just do a quick intro and then I will kind of start with some questions if that's okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Welcome to MatchED's Match of the Week, where we bring you amazing products that have captured our attention and our hearts. I'm Carly, co-founder of MatchED, and today I'm so excited to share about something that our family has personally used for years and years and years. Yes, in homeschool years, I think I'm about 146. But I'm delighted to introduce you today to Charlene Notgrass. She is a homeschooling mom, an author, and the co-founder of Notgrass History, which is a trusted and beloved curriculum option for families who really want to teach history through the lens of faith and story and heart. Charlene and her husband Ray started Notgrass back in 1999. They're probably over 146 in homeschool years too, but they've created something over the years that has really helped thousands of families not just teach history, but really live it, remember it, and connect it with God's bigger story. She is a really gentle, wise voice in the homeschool world, and every page of their curriculum really reflects that heart. So, welcome, Charlene. It is an honor to chat with you today.
Really excited. I want to let everybody know that we did found it with our son John, who is still, we're all still working together, which is a blessing. And our girls were definitely part of it from the beginning. But the three of us are the ones who signed the papers at the courthouse, and all of that to start the
You,
business.
you were tri-founders then, not just
That's
co-founders.
right.
That's
Yes,
great. Well,
that's right.
what originally led you and Ray and John, but you and Ray first to start homeschooling? Like if we back up to the beginning, and how did that decision really shape your family over all the years?
Oh my, it made just all the difference in the world. Our children were in public school. Sadly, I wish that were not true. If I could do it over again, they would never have been anywhere but at home. And that was actually my heart from the very beginning. I had friends who were sending their children to preschool, and so I thought I ought to try to do that too. From it just seemed like the thing to do in the church where we were. And I tried it twice. I lasted 1 day both times, and I consciously thought, "I am going" this was John was our oldest, "I am going to keep him at home with me as long as I can because I'm gonna have to put him in public school where he will learn their values, and I want him to learn mine as long as he can." Isn't that sad that that in my heart I knew that, but I saw Dr. Raymond Moore being interviewed on television, and I don't know how many people even know about him, but he's really the grandfather of the modern homeschooling movement. And I saw him in this interview, and that day I told Ray, "Oh, this is what I want to do. I want to teach." John was going to be in kindergarten in a year or two, and I want to do this. And he had a secondary education minor and had gone to school to be a teacher. And he said, "Oh no, school is where that's where they know what to do. That's just he just thought I was nuts." And of course, he deeply regrets that now. Who would have thought back then that he would end up being, teaching so many homeschoolers through his curriculum, in a way. But he actually never did teach in public school. But at the time, he was a minister, and um, so we didn't do it. But then we got the kids in public school. And after our youngest spent a year in kindergarten was when by then we were just so tired of the values conflicts mostly, but also we wanted our children to be able to learn at the pace that really fit for them. So I would say it was the values and the pace, the learning pace. And so we, being well organized people who always plan everything way in advance, we decided in August and got started right away. So that was how it happened for us.
It does happen. It's those decisions. I enrolled my son last night in a class that started today, and I don't think he was super happy about that, but that's how we do that, right? Just one
Yeah,
one step at a time. When
right.
you look back at all those years with your kids at home, and you got a lot of them, what were some of the most meaningful moments from your homeschool journey?
Oh, the first one that comes to mind is reading books aloud with one another. And you see that in our curriculum. You know, we recommend real books to go along with our history books, but it was reading books aloud and going to actual places. And those traits in our family came from mine and Ray's own childhoods. His parents never went anywhere, hardly at all. They his dad painted the house or whatever when he had vacation time. And he had, I don't remember, a week or two, but his dad really encouraged him to read great literature. On the other hand, I was growing up in a home where my dad literally only got every year 2 full days and 2 half days of vacation, other than just the like big 5 holidays. That was it. But we were going anytime we could. We would go on Sunday afternoon. We would go on Wednesday afternoon. He had Wednesday afternoon off. Even if my parents had to come and get us out of school, we would go to the state fair or we would. Uh, Daddy never said you ought to love history, but he was taking us to Lincoln's birthplace and my old Kentucky home and Fort Sumter and Andrew Jackson's home, the Hermitage. And we played on the steps of the replica of the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee, that I was growing up going. And my mother sewed for the public in our house. So I was watching a very industrious, busy lady stay at home on purpose. She said, I could work in a factory, but I am staying at home because I want to be with you all. And then there's Daddy who's saying, okay, I'm off for the afternoon. Where are we going? So we put those together and those really became our best memories, books and trips and short trips, long trips. That's what we did. Not because we were fabulously wealthy. I love to add that. It was because I learned from my parents that you can do it really inexpensively. We slept in a
That's
Volkswagen bus that it was a brand new one and it wasn't painted with peace signs and stuff, even though it was the 60s. But they took the middle seat out and put a twin mattress in it for them to sleep in. I slept in the front seat with the steering wheel, and my brother slept in the back where you put the suitcases. And that we kept that way. And because it was more important to go and do than to worry about not having enough money. So we did that with our kids too, not in a Volkswagen bus, but anyway, those were the
that
best.
That is beautiful. And I have to say, I think for our family, it was really similar. I almost sometimes felt bad for my husband because we have so many beautiful inside jokes from all the read alouds and the books on tape that we listen to that that it will really live on for forever. But I was going to ask what surprised you most about homeschooling in those early years. I feel like the Volkswagen bus might should maybe make an appearance here, but is there something that didn't go as planned or something that became a gift that was unexpected?
Well, the first thing I think of when you ask what it was unexpected was that it was going to change our whole lives. Ray and I were very deeply committed Christians. Ray decided not to be a college professor, which is what he had decided by the time we were about to get married. He gave that up to be a campus minister, and we spent uh, 22 years in ministry, mainly with college students. And so it wasn't that we weren't deeply committed to God already, but homeschooling just deeply changed us. It just became everything our children learn has got to fit into um, that ultimate goal, and actually wrote down a goal for our homeschool, which was that we and our children and their spouses and every generation from us forward would live for God on earth and live forever in heaven with Him. And we just, everything had to fit with that. And if it didn't, it didn't belong in our homeschool. So that was a big surprise. I thought I was just starting to homeschool, but we were really learning how to live.
That is such a beautiful insight. I'm going to start crying over here. It's so true. It
It is
does. It can change everything.
everything. It just
And
changed
just
everything.
being able to create and help our kids live out their purpose is really a beautiful privilege. Let's
Mhm.
talk about Notgrass. It's become such a trusted name in the homeschool world. When you first began writing the curriculum, what did you feel like was maybe missing in the homeschool space that you felt called to create it?
Well, I had done a lot of unit studies that I pulled together myself or that I got out of from other people's ideas. And I just knew how much time that took. And I knew that there were lots and lots of children who were growing up having to use curriculum that was not necessarily very creative,
Mhm.
and that I knew there were a lot of students who would never have the benefit of a unit style approach because their mother were taking care of an elderly parent, they had a special needs child, there were 10 children, just the mother, it wasn't that that mother was less than in any way, it was just reality. Those kids were going to have to do something that might be boring and that really might not teach them nearly as much as they could learn. And so our purpose was to create a curriculum that was as easy to use as a traditional textbook, but that had the breadth of a unit study. I think of them as a unit study in a package. And yes, with our curriculum, you might decide to do some of the crafts we recommend and need to go to the craft store and get some stuff, but you don't have to go look for ideas. It's and the idea and even down to we use a lot of primary sources, even starting in first grade, but we publish all of those. We don't say go read the Declaration of Independence, go read the
Mhm.
Bill of Rights, go read the Gettysburg Address. We publish the book and you just open it up and there's not a lot of superfluous things in there. It is just what we recommend. And it just is so much easier to do a unit study if it's just right there for you. So that was what we tried to do from the very beginning.
Well, you guys did such a great job blending history with rich literature and then biblical truth. And in a time when a lot of kids aren't necessarily maybe getting that through history. And so as you built these curriculums, what was so important about in history that it would be taught through story and your documents and biblical worldview? Why was it so important to you to do that way?
I remember when we were pulling together In Their Words, which is the primary source book that goes with the high school Exploring
Mhm.
World History. And we chose some hymns, like hymns from hundreds of years ago. And I remember thinking, I want these kids to know that people believed this then. It's not just something my mom recommends that my church right now says or does, but this is something that's been happening for a really long time. And also, that it's not just in one place, it's in many places in the world. It may be in a tribe in Africa, or it may be in a cathedral in France, or so that's part of it, that to broaden the student's view of the reality of what God is doing and his relationship with many people over time. That's part of the reason. And I love to use the illustration of Blue Willow, which is something that students read when they're doing learning about the Great Depression in America the Beautiful. In the unit on the Depression, the students learn about the Civilian Conservation Corps. They learn about Roosevelt's Fireside Chats. They learn about all these alphabet soup programs that the New Deal began. But at the same time, they're reading Blue Willow, which is the story. It's fiction, but that kind of story happened over and over again during the Depression. It's a little girl who has lost her mother, and she's living with her dad and her stepmother in a car because they can't afford a house, and they're traveling from place to place and doing migrant farm work. And she switched schools and all of that, and her only prized possession is a Blue Willow plate that belonged to her mother. And to me, it's great to read that book just for its own sake, but if you read that book while you're learning that Franklin Roosevelt is giving this speech, and men are working in the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they're building a bridge you might go over when you go to the Great Smoky Mountains, or I just feel like um, that history is so much more than what's happening in London and Washington, D.C. and Moscow. It is what's happening in your house and my house and your great grandparents' house. And that's why it's we don't live. I think I've thought about this a lot. When I was in public school, and when I was in high school, I went to English class, I went to general science, I went to band period, I went to, my history class, and then I got out of school, uh, and after I was out of college, my life has never been that way since then. It has never been separated. It's always
Yes.
been integrated, and every mother knows that. You get up in the morning and you cook something, and then you wash something, and then you read to somebody, and you figure out, how much money you're going to spend at the grocery store or whatever. It's just all integrated, and I think that's how God wants us to live. He doesn't want us to uh, just have this secular life and then go worship Him on Sunday. It's
Mhm.
all of life is, in Him we live and breathe and have our being. And we just live our lives. It's just like, the very popular passage for homeschoolers from Deuteronomy about teaching your children as you walk along the road, and as you sit down, and as you lie down, and as you get up. That's how we live. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, Charlene, that's so beautiful. And I think it's so true. We see it. You can't separate. It has to be integrated. And that's what you're really doing. Your lessons don't just teach facts. They really reach the heart. And I've seen that with my three teenage boys. And you're obviously extremely grounded in your faith, and it shows in everything you create. How has your faith, that integration, shaped your vision of education and your approach really as you integrate
I
it in?
I hope this answers it. I heard one time this illustration. It's not original with me, but it was that a person goes through life, and they graduate from high school, and so then they go to college and they graduate from college, and then they get married, and then they have children and, have this job they're doing, and then they retire. And then what? You know, if it's not go to live with God forever in heaven, then what is the point of any of that other stuff? There is no point in it. And if we educate children just to graduate from high school, to graduate from college, to get a good job, we are cheating them. It's just not enough. It isn't enough. And so that's my philosophy of education, is that we are training children to serve God while they're here, and to do a good job at living themselves, at rearing their own children, of being wives or husbands, and to also I mean, we can't make them decide to follow Jesus, but we can introduce them, we can make it appealing, and we can make sure it's not left out, that it's that they see in us that it's the most important aspect of life.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful legacy that I think you're leaving behind through Notgrass, is that you're helping families really incorporate and integrate more into their daily lives.
I hope so. One of the questions you sent me ahead of time, I would love to uh, answer. You ask about some story that still makes me cry. I don't
Well,
think
then
I've
I'll
ever.
cry too.
Well, there are two that just deeply touch my heart. And that is that Ray got a message one time from the mother of a teenage boy who finished. It was in this, must have been in the spring, and he had studied exploring world history. And the last lesson in exploring world history is, it starts with creation, and then again, it's like a person's life. Okay, we're going through the history of the world. Okay, what's the last lesson about? It's about, okay, where do you want to be forever? And I don't know if the mother knew he was ready for that lesson or what, but she was in the kitchen and he walked in crying. This is her teenage son. And he said, um, she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I just was reading the last lesson in exploring world history, and I have not been living the way I need to be living." There's that one. That's one. The other one was a lady wrote me, and she had come to a homeschool convention, and I had been there. We don't travel to homeschool conventions much at all. It's been a couple of years since we've been to any, but this was in St. Louis, I'm pretty sure. I think I remember the incident myself, but I've met so many, so many people, but I think I remember this. And she came to our booth, and of course, everything we have is from a Christian worldview. And she came and she said, "I want something secular. I am not interested in anything that's Christian." So I said, "Well, just let me show you, and as you know, it's very important to us that our books be colorful and cheerful and everything." So I showed it to her, and she 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 was she was sold on it, by what she saw inside. And she said, "So I bought it anyway." And at first, I just skipped the Bible part. And then I started um, reading it. And now I and all of our children are followers of Jesus. And I tell people I homeschooled myself into the arms of Jesus. So, that'll get you up in the morning to keep doing what
That'll
we're
bring a
trying to
lump
do.
to your throat.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember distinctly when I got that email, I was just over the top. Yeah, just exactly what we want to
Well,
happen.
that transitions into my next question, which is my very favorite question to ask people, is what's your why? Why do you pour into this every day? Why do you continue to lean in this way?
Well, I I tell this story often, but I'm not proud of it at all. We we started homeschooling, and the first year I used I had like I said, we started in August, and I had a friend who had 6 years of homeschool curriculum at her house that she had purchased from a very academically oriented, uh, not not Christian, I mean, not anti-Christian, but not a Christian curriculum. And she had bought it because her son went to public school, but she was determined that he get into this exclusive junior high. And so she homeschooled him in the summer, and he went to public school. And I just thought,
Mm.
oh my goodness, you poor kid. And but anyway, she gave me all of that. She let me borrow all of that. I mean, I needed something. It's all because I have nothing. And I was able to use a lot of it was just fine, but I didn't just use it completely, but I did start homeschooling with a gigantic stack of um, school books because our kids were in 3 different grades.
Mhm.
And I immediately started rearranging the chapters so they were all studying the same thing at the same time. I always had the heart of a homeschooler, and I learned from my mother, just do it. You can do it. Never can do anything. That was just how she reared me. But but it was really hard. And Ray was a minister, and I was afraid, people were judging me, and you live in the fishbowl and all of that. So it was really high pressure for me. And then the next year in the spring, I went to my first homeschool convention ever, and I bought this really, really, really good unit study, and I will not name it because I never criticize, in public anybody else's curriculum. But the book was this thick, and it was full of unit study ideas. And I just drove myself crazy the next year. I was just up till 11 o'clock trying to pull stuff together. It would recommend these books. I'd go to the library, I couldn't find them. And after 2 years, I was a mess. And Ray said, there's got to be an easier way to educate these kids than this. And so we dropped out for 2 years. And when we came back, was that time that I wrote that goal, everybody be in heaven and all of that. And when we came back, it was a new day,
Mhm.
absolutely a new day. Our first day of school, we drove out of away from a mission trip on our way to the Oregon coast and stopped to see, stopped at a national park and drove past the Columbia Gorge. And I said to the kids, "Isn't this cool? You're in school." I mean, I completely changed. And that's when it was just such a joy. But I know what it's like to be discouraged. I really, really know what that's like. And when I um got there, I just was I didn't have anybody. I didn't have a bunch of friends. This was 1992, I guess. And yeah, and I didn't have anybody to talk to encourage me. And so I have an absolute passion to keep people homeschooling. and to hold their hand and to help them never be where I was. And that is just that's my motivation. I want I want kids to love their curriculum. I want it to be easy for the parents. I want to help it be. I want to I want to hold people's hands and I want to give them what they need so they can succeed. And so that's why I get up and do what I do every day.
Oh,
I absolutely love it. Love
it's
it.
so apparent that that is your heart. And to kind of build on what you were just saying as we close, we both know that so many parents that are listening right now are tired and they are unsure. I hear all the time, right? They're lonely, they're afraid, and they're exhausted. So, what would you say to those parents who just wonder if they're doing enough, or is there a piece of encouragement or a practical tip that you would like to leave them with?
Well, I like to say don't worry about covering everything. The universe is everything. You're not going to cover it, so just get over it. And I think that in the gentlest way possible. You are teaching your children how to learn. You're teaching them lots of things for them to learn right now, but you're teaching them how to learn
Mhm.
too. And uh, time is your friend, it's not your enemy. That you they have the rest of their lives that God gives them to learn what they need. And you're not responsible as you think you are. Because I like to give this illustration that as a homeschooling mother, you are putting pieces of a quilt together. There's this piece and that piece and the other piece, but you're not going to be the one who finishes the whole quilt. God's the quilter. You're just his helper. And when you just realize he loves your children more than you do, and isn't that amazing? Because you know how much you love them. How could he possibly love them more than you do? But he does. And and he wants them to succeed and he wants you to succeed. And he could have picked somebody else to be your child's mother, but he didn't. He picked you. So if he trusts you with these kids,
Mm.
then you can trust you with these kids too.
Wow. That's a beautiful word picture. One, that he trusts us enough and that we're building a quilt, right? Well, thank you, Charlene, for joining me today. And everyone, head over to matchedcommunity.com. Check out this amazing match of the week. Look at Notgrass. Like Charlene said, it is so visually appealing, which is so unlikely for a history curriculum. And then the content and the heart is really what captures you. So today, I just want to affirm and remind you that what you do matters. Like Charlene says, what you are building is something lasting. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You just really have to do it purposefully. So let's journey together. And thank you, Charlene.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it, Carly.
I'm going to stop our recording here. Oh, thank you.